Welcome back, my little friends, to the show that never apparently ends because it's Monday, and here is First Ring Daily.
If we just like move Mondays to Tuesdays, would Tuesday just start sucking the same? Is that how this works? Because
It's
I
only
don't know
one way
what
to
it
find
is.
out. Only one way to find out. But before we dive into that, Meerkat. Oh, it's still working. There we go. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD for a free trial offer, and that will be going away soon. So definitely go grab that. Yep, there we go. My very ever so generic
Hopefully-
picture of just a
Hopefully
keyboard.
you
With
didn't triple or cause any epileptic fits when you were doing that little switching there, but
well, it'd be our highest rated show ever. Paul falls over convulsing.
exactly. Then my cat could walk over and just knock the webcam off the top of the computer there, and you could see me twitching on the ground.
Don't worry, I wouldn't stop recording either. But interesting news, if you will, breaking news this weekend. Not really, but
Yep.
kind of interesting stuff. So
Well,
Apple apparently,
sort of though, right?
I mean, so one of the missing components to Apple's "we're going to do everything ourselves" puzzle is they're going to start building apparently their own displays, but this is still very early, and don't think your next iPhone is going to have this what they're calling micro LED technology. But Mark Gurman with the scoop again says, hey, it's probably coming to the Apple Watch first, and then likely they would scale it up for the phone. But he's saying phone usage is a couple years away. He didn't give an exact timeline for the watch, but apparently Apple is starting to feel confident that they can build displays better than Samsung. And that's
What
the
is that
next
little...
big thing. They got the
no,
chip.
this is just an sorry. There's like a little it's just part of my microphone. I thought it looked like a stain on my shirt. See? And then I moved and it didn't move. And I thought, what is that thing? Is it a stain on my
This
webcam?
is what I deal with on a daily basis.
Oh, are we live?
No, we're not live, but
I mean,
still,
we're recording or whatever. Yeah.
Just
What were we talking about again? Just kidding. If I can know two things about the iPhone display technology or Apple display technology, I think they are that A, it will be the best display in the world, bar none. And also, part of a wider continuum of steps that Apple is taking to differentiate itself from the competition by doing everything it can by itself. They've already make a ton of special chips inside the phone, including by the way, the CPU, the system on a chip.
Yep.
And they've really just gone to town on making sure that if it's core to the experience, they're going to control it. You know, it's an interesting strategy. It's one that Samsung is doing too, and because Apple is kind of started as a software company and got into hardware, and because Samsung is a hardware company that kind of has been getting into software, it's interesting to watch them both going kind of toward the same thing. You know, Samsung is busy trying to replace every single component of Android with its own thing, which short term creates kind of a confusing mess.
Which and the one giant missing piece of that puzzle now, at least in my opinion, are the cameras, which you have to think are fully on the agenda if they're not already going down that path.
Yep.
So. Yeah,
Apple has a rich history of partnering with companies when they need to, and then throwing them under the bus as soon as they can. And I wrote an article about this morning, but one of the things I kind of alluded to was that back when Mac OS X was kind of the ongoing concern at Apple, like the ongoing concern, Apple used to routinely steal ideas from its third-party developer base and just integrate that stuff right into the OS. And it's a weird kind of cannibalistic approach to, I guess in that case, software development, but they basically just do the same thing today. They'll source hardware components by two or more companies, which is prudent when they have to go with a third party. But increasingly, what they're trying to do, obviously, is take as much of it in-house as they can. And if that means, stealing ideas outright or buying small companies and, just integrating it into their stuff, whatever. I mean, they're obviously very capable of doing either and have no problem doing so.
Here's and I have no idea if there's any truth to this, but I'm going to regurgitate it anyways because it sounded good. Supposedly, did Apple not make FaceTime?
Oh, that one I don't remember. I remember things like Sherlock, which became search and is sort of part of Siri now, came from a third-party developer. They just took it, I think that's the one I remember.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is that supposedly because of that is the reason why there's no such thing as like three-way or four-way FaceTime is because they can't.
Oh, well, I mean, Microsoft went through those kind of architectural issues with Skype, and that worked out great. So I don't see why. No, do not. Sorry. She almost dumped like a giant tin of pens and other metal things onto the floor. God, this cat is evil. She
No
was
idea where it
literally
gets it
pushing
from.
on it with her two hands. You're headed for a fall, kid. Oh, brother. She just rolls around like, she's just, any attention is good attention, right?
The
Anywho,
Windows 8.1 of cats.
yeah, yeah, you are a mess. Anywho, yeah, Apple. I mean, I tweeted this. It was kind of a jerky kind of a comment, but it was, in regards to a headline that was on some, Apple fawning tech blog where it was like iPhone 10 users say they don't even notice the notch, that thing that everyone complained about. And it's like, right, but they don't notice what a terrible company Apple is either. I mean, like, what do you expect? I mean, you have to really kind of hold your nose and look the other way. And it's not just Apple. I should be clear about that. In fact, the next thing we're going to talk about is Microsoft going down the same direction. But increasingly, if you have any moral fortitude of any kind at all, I mean, dealing with any of these giant tech companies is kind of a tough thing because you have to just kind of accept the fact that they're going to abuse all kinds of companies and people, as much as they have to. It's tough.
Yep. And speaking of Microsoft, what are they doing? Since you already broke the lead in thing.
Abusing companies and people as much as they can. So I back in the early 90s, before The Daily Show moved over to Jon Stewart, the original host of the show was this guy, Craig Kilborn, who I thought at the time was really funny. I mean, he's kind of dropped off the map, but he had a joke at the time about Germany going after Scientologists, which is kind of crazy given Germany's history of going after specific religious groups in fairly violent ways. And so he held like a mock interview with then Chancellor of Germany, I think it was Helmut Kohl. And he said, Mr. Kohl, I mean, given Germany's history, how could you possibly be going after a religious group again like this? And the guy said, not really, but in the interview said, Craig, it's like riding a bike.
Wow.
And yeah. So if we kind of transport that joke into the present, that's Microsoft with all of their antitrust issues and product bundling baloney back from the late 90s, early 2000s. Some time has passed, some water's under the bridge, and what are they doing again? They're forcing people to use their own products inside of Windows. And the thing that just came out, I want to be really clear about this. This was triggered by an announcement to the skip ahead version of RS5, which is the version of Windows 10 that's not coming out until September of this year. And specifically the note says, look, we're testing this feature. We want to see your feedback. It's literally designed, I think, so that Microsoft can get overly positive feedback from the insider community, which they will, because it's, there's not a lot of disagreement there, to do something terrible, which in this case is just one small thing, which is you click a link in an email in the mail program that's built into Windows 10. And no matter what browser you have configured as your default, it will open in Microsoft Edge. And I'm sorry, but this is not okay. But more to the point, this is not the first way in which Microsoft forces users to use Microsoft Edge, even though they might have another web browser configured as the default. There are many examples of this kind of thing where you click a link somewhere and it goes to Edge no matter what you want. But there's also kind of a deeper seated thing happening in Windows, including one I didn't actually mention in my article, which is that the way that you configure default apps in Windows 10 has changed in the current version, right? So previous to the Fall Creators update, in addition to that really simple interface and settings, you could go to a control panel interface where it actually listed all of the applications on your system. And you could go down to, say, Google Chrome and say, look, I know I just set it as the default, but I actually want Chrome to have every default that it could be configured for. And what you would find is that, let's say there were 31 defaults that Chrome could be set to. Configuring it as the default in settings only connected it with 7 of those 31 items. And that meant that there were other conditions under which you could do something and it would still go to Edge, even though you specifically told the system you wanted to use Chrome. Well, that interface is gone, by the way. That is not available anymore. And if you want to use Chrome as your default, which most people do, by the way, you can click it in the interface. It will beg you to stay with Edge. But Edge will still launch in many situations, and it's kind of a sly little underhanded way that Microsoft, uh, basically cajoles people into using a product that they do not want to use. The irony, by the way, of all this is that if you look at Edge in the latest, in the RS4 version of Windows 10, it's shipping sometime in the next 30 days. Actually, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good browser. That, unfortunately, is kind of beside the point because they're just tunneling you down this experience, whether you want it or not. And then there's other stuff, too. I mean, obviously, the future of Windows is in flux, but they're trying to turn it into this mobile platform. And if you look at Windows 10 S today, if you look at Windows 10 in S mode and RS4, what you will find is that they're in that default that default apps experience I was just talking about. Not only can you not configure it on an app by app basis, but you cannot configure a default browser. So even if Google Chrome magically came to the Windows Store tomorrow, you can install it in that case on Windows 10s. You still can't make it your default browser. You're not going to be able to do it. They're forcing you to use Microsoft Edge. And then, of course, within Edge on Windows 10s and S mode, they're forcing you to use Bing as the default search engine. It's just part of a giant. It's a giant conspiracy theory, Brad. It's just like on the X-Files. There's a cabal of sub-governmental agencies working with Microsoft. No, that part was. I just made
that too far. I will tell you this though, that Microsoft can absolutely get away with shoving Edge down everyone's throat now without probably any legal ramifications because there's high precedence among iOS and the fact that Edge is a very small user in the browser market share at this point, unlike many years ago.
Listen, Edge could rocket to 90% usage share on Windows 10, and they're still never going to have any antitrust issues. And so I guess, listen, this article that I wrote about this topic is kind of interesting on a number of levels. Not the article itself, but just the kind of the feedback, right? So most of it was overly supportive, which, I sort of appreciate on one level, obviously, but I'm not looking for agreement, although when I feel like I'm right about something, it's obviously appreciated. But even those people who disagreed with me were at least civil for the most part. And so we have this article now on the site that has like over 100 comments on it. And honestly, the conversation there was a pretty good one overall. There's a couple of idiots, always, as always. But I actually really appreciate that aspect of it. But, the issue here is that, yeah, you're right. So there's no antitrust thing coming. No one is going to hold Microsoft accountable for this. And that means it's up to us. And so the reason that I raised this issue and the reason I wrote such a long thing about it, the reason I kind of spell out the other places in the OS where this is happening and how this has been progressing over every Windows 10 version is that really what we're looking at is a Darwinian thing. We have to, as Microsoft's customers, be the ones that push back.
Yep.
They're going to get feedback from the insider community that will tell them, that will give them the evidence, which I'll put in quotes, to proceed with this plan. That's what's going to happen, right? If this doesn't happen right now because people like me and others are complaining about it publicly and it's raising the issue and normal people are starting to see it out in the world, Microsoft will pull back. But you know what? They're just going to do it for like one version of Windows 10 or something. This is going to come back. This is a one-way street. There is no way that we don't keep barreling toward this future where Windows becomes iOS, a lockdown mobile platform that is, by the way, streamlined, meaning it's more secure, it's more reliable, and it offers consistent performance over time. It is exactly what Microsoft says that Windows 10s is today. That's the plan.
You know what else this also kind of reminds me of? Ads in Windows 10.
Yeah, it's just right. Same exact slippery slope. I don't know why I have a hard time saying that. Yeah, this is part of that same continuum. Now, obviously, iOS doesn't have ads in the operating system per se. I realize there are ads in the App Store or whatever. But you don't see like a little banner ad at the bottom of like the dock or whatever. That would be amazing. Yeah. But yeah, Microsoft is, I should say this, this doesn't justify or excuse what Microsoft does, but I think it's important to understand what's happening from Microsoft's perspective. They see the world, they see a world that is more clear than the one they describe to us when it comes to Windows. They know that the whole world is changing and that these mobile platforms are taking off and that Windows is in decline. And so how do you continue to earn money from this thing and engage a base that exists and keep people from leaving the platform as much as you can, and they do various things which we can kind of agree or disagree with, but there's a certain desperation to it when you think about it, when you have to put ads into something like Windows. Windows is a computing platform. There should be nothing like this in Windows. And the only thing that saves it for me personally as a what am I now, 20 something, almost 25 years into this, as a kind of, not an advocate for Windows per se, I would say more of an advocate for Windows users, is that the competition is so terrible. I couldn't bear using any of it. And I look at that stuff all the time. I spend so much time investigating things like Chromebook and Mac OS, and even Linux, by the way. I've been looking at Linux again. I do that from time to time, not as much as the other two, but I look at it. And all of these things I find to be lacking on any number of levels. Congratulations, Microsoft. You've been able to keep me in the fold, not because you're great, but because everything else sucks.
Well,
I know. This is a big issue. I know there's going to be people who think I'm overreacting to this. I get that. That I'm angry guy on the porch screaming at the kids walking across the lawn. This is a big issue, and I can't. It's hard to not go on and on about it and to sound shrill in doing so. But this is a soul level problem.
Our next podcast sponsor will probably be a therapist, because that's where
Yes.
Paul's headed after the show, apparently.
Now let me just sweep 2 cups of cat hair off of my desk. God, serious. Look,
Just a little
it's
gross.
cat hair. Look at my hand. Look. It's cat hair.
Yeah, no, we're
See
going to
it?
go away from that, because nobody wants to see that. Nobody wins here, Paul. Nobody wins.
That's for sure.
Speaking of anybody who does want to win, if you have been thinking about subscribing to Premium, you should go ahead and do that, because by the end of the month, the price will reset. It is on sale. You can find that on Thurrott.com.
Thurrott.com.
You will also find the rants
Yes.
of an angry man on a porch on Thurrott.com,
Shit.
among other things.
Just yelling at the sky.
Oh, man. You know what?
Which,
Speaking
by
of
the way,
sky,
I will be
it's,
doing tomorrow, because it was almost 50 degrees yesterday. It's almost going to be 50 degrees tomorrow. And what's happening tomorrow, Brad? What's happening? Can you guess?
Yeah.
3 to 6 inches of snow is what's
Oh,
happening
you got
tomorrow.
it bad.
Yeah.
So it's
You know
supposed
what?
to be supposed to
winter.
be
I am so tired of this.
dang near 60 degrees today. I'm actually going to probably go have lunch outside, because
This isn't just winter going out with a big bang. This is winter mooning me as it drives by on its way out. Like I don't. Now we've reached just personal insult level when it comes to weather. There's no reason for this. Well, global warming probably, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
Like enough. Okay, cat murder is
Surratt has reached his maximum, and that's apparently 6 inches.
Yeah, you're right. Wow.
Look at that delayed joke reaction, folks. There it is.
Okay. It's again, Monday morning's a little tough.
There is there's no basement for Microsoft or the quality of this podcast, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, it's very nice and sunny outside, and it was warm this weekend. We were outside with the kid. I let her just run sprints in the front yard because she has too much energy. And you're right, it's supposed to be snowing here tomorrow, although I don't think... If I wake up and there's 3 to 6 inches of snow on the ground, I won't be on this podcast. I will be in that therapy office with you.
Yeah, you'll hear me screaming from Pennsylvania if this is what happens to me tomorrow.
Yep. Besides
besides
the wonderful snow there, Paul, you got anything else for today?
I don't know. Not that I can think of. How about you?
I'm going to go outside.
Yeah.
Actually, that's
a good
a
idea.
lie. That is a bold lie. I've got a meeting from 11:30 to 12, and then I'm going to go outside and stare at the sun for a while before it goes away for many, many months again.
Yeah, I'll probably do some kind of a walk today while I still can.
Sounds like you're about to have hip surgery.
I know. That's what it feels like.
Miracast still working? Nope. Reconnect it. There it is.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD to learn how to back up your data just a little bit better and protect yourself from ransomware. And we'll be right back here tomorrow on Tuesday unless we get 7 inches of snow and it ends our lives.